We're so grateful that you are with us for our first installment of 2023's Big Questions with the Rossmore Interfaith Council. Sarah Blackstock is going to get us started. Take it away.
Thank you, Will, and thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our 7th year of the Big Questions. Some of you explorers and adventurers have been on this interfaith ship for 7+ years, and so therefore you have earned a honorary sailor first class certificate. Now, obviously, my husband helps a little bit with this, and I know that Robert Esch is a sailor, so you probably know about that. Anyway, it's wonderful to welcome you. And Pascal Kaplan is one of our speakers in the future. Welcome, Pascal. And Nazir, welcome, Nazir. He has been a speaker for, I don't know, many, many times, and it's always so good. He's going to be speaking also in the next couple of months. So it's great to have so many of you joining us. The big question this year is humankind good or selfish? Thank you to Susie Cole, president of the Interfaith Council of Rossmore, and to the Big Questions Committee, Gloria Sunshine, Ruth Ahern, and Channing Miller, all of whom are joining us today. We much appreciate Will McGarvey, Executive Director of the Contra Costa County Interfaith Council, who generously has been hosting our Big Questions Zoom for the whole time, I believe, at least when we've been on Zoom. And also thanks to Rossmore Channel 28, who should be here but aren't, because I probably should have let them know. Anyway, we will send a recording to them, and they will be able to present it on Channel 28 in the next few months or so. So even though today we have only one big question, is humankind good or selfish? This one big question does suggest further questions. For example, overall, is humankind getting more selfish or more altruistic? And if humankind is getting more selfish, what would it take to reverse the process and start in the direction of becoming more altruistic? So another question that I had is, how does family culture, social groupings contribute to a human being good or selfish? So there are many questions, and after we'll have the first speaker, and then it'll be your turn to ask questions or make comments about this topic. And then we'll have the second speaker, and we can continue our conversation. So I would like to start our first speaker, who is, I've got to tell you that it's been very interesting the last hour. Reverend Rodney Lemery, representing the Universalist. No, that's not right. I never get that straight. Universalist Church. What is it?
It's Unitarian Universalist.
Unitarian
Universalist.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go
anyway, on. Reverend Rodney had to cancel, had something very important come up. And so just when Rodney had to cancel, within a few minutes, Shanti Rubenstone was in touch with Sunshine, and Shanti said, I thought I was speaking today. She was scheduled for March. So here we have a really interesting synchronicity that one canceled, and behold, within a few minutes, Shanti turns up. So like I said earlier, we're not alone. So Shanti, Dr. Shanti Rubenstone is a Stanford educated medical doctor who now has a coaching practice called transformational medicine. Shanti serves as a minister, light bearer, and I don't know how to pronounce this, Shanti, Kriyacharya, and spiritual director at Ananda in Palo Alto. She has been a spiritual seeker and a leader throughout her life. She's a much-loved counselor and teacher whose inspirational talks are rich with stories from her life as a physician and her many years on the spiritual path. So we welcome Shanti representing Ananda. Thank you, Shanti, for joining us. Thank you for
all.
making the mistake.
Yeah. Thank you all for having me. Clearly, I didn't make the mistake. As we've all said, there are forces much greater than us that are at play here. So I was sitting here panicking, thinking, I never got a Zoom link. I know I'm supposed to be speaking. And just fortuitously, Sunshine picked up her phone when I called and said, well, you were actually on in March, but here you are. So I quickly said to her, is the question the same? Anyway, I love how the universe works. I think we all do. That's what we're doing here. It's a pleasure to be with you. I've never been here before, though I've been hearing about this group for many years from through Gloria, who occasionally not only comes over to Palo Alto, but she's been on a spiritual pilgrimage with me down to Los Angeles. So she's actually a dear friend. So it's wonderful to be here. It's interesting, yesterday, the way we do Sunday services at Ananda, which is a big global spiritual community, is we take a reading from the Bible and a reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and the minister, light bearer, who's giving the sermon usually speaks in such a way that would show how the readings from those two great spiritual writings, among many others in the world, of course, this is just how we do it, how they're saying the same exact thing, which I feel deeply, is of course the same with all great spiritual paths. In the end, truth really is one, and pretty much we all talk about the same thing, though often in our own language. But the reading yesterday was from the Gospel of St. John. I won't do that sermon, but the beginning of the reading was, no man hath seen God. That's how that piece started. And it reminded me very much of the question today, because what comes up for me as I hear this question is humankind, I forget what the question is now, is humankind, what was the first part, Sarah? Do you have the question?
Yes. The question is humankind good or selfish?
Or selfish, yeah. And I thought, as soon as I heard that question a month ago, I thought to myself, it depends on how we're speaking or holding humankind. This is how I would hear it, that as human beings, we've been thrust into the position of being more self-involved, more self-centered than we are, in fact, in our truer soul nature. So the soul, for me, for the way I hold this, is that the soul that is using this body, if you will, almost as a vehicle to make spiritual progress in this life, is pure goodness. It's a true spark of the divine. It's a manifestation of everything that's good and whole and moving upward and towards the light. And the human being, by its very nature, is much more self-involved and therefore much more selfish. So that it's the human being, all of us really, that tends to think, I need this, we need that, protect our families. We function much more on this completely, in fact, on this physical plane through this physical body. So just like what St. John was saying when he said, no man hath seen God, he was saying with the physical eyes of a human being, one cannot really see the divine. But when we're in when we think of ourselves as spiritual beings, and we move more from that place of intuition, from the purity of the heart, from our more inspired place, our true nature, the meaning of yoga, union, oneness with all that is, then we can only be kind. And I think this is really what one of the Beatitudes, which I'm sure we've all heard, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, really means as we really purify ourselves, as we move closer and closer in this life, really by asking questions that you're all asking. And again, I don't know all of the different spiritual paths or ways of living that have been represented here, but in my experience, almost every person of faith that I've listened to throughout this now relatively long life comes to the same conclusion. And that is that as we move away from our self-centeredness, our concern for ourselves, even today is just such a perfect and beautiful example of it. It's tiny. It's in some ways meaningless. It wouldn't have mattered if I didn't show up today. If I hadn't made that mistake, you would carry on. You'd have a speaker, you'd have lots of questions. Probably everyone who's here listening could easily speak to this question, but that's not the way it was. The way it was orchestrated by something bigger than any of us. So that in fact, when I was asking myself 15 minutes ago, when have I ever in 75 years made a mistake like this before? Showed up for a talk that I was not supposed to be giving, or not show up for a talk? The answer is never. It's never happened, but it happened today and it was perfect. Everything is just being orchestrated in this perfect way. And I said to myself, you didn't need to be here. They could have done fine without you, but you are here. So pay attention, feel these people, connect with them, because something's happened for the greater good. And I feel that that all ties into the question. And for me, the main answer, there's many ways to think of this, of course, is that we can't help it in our human condition. It's almost like the question of original sin. I mean, we came into these bodies, we in a way left our divine home in God, and we are, each of us, doing the very best we can do to move closer and closer, to be more in tune with, to vibrationally connect with that which is most real in us, which is that soul that resides in us, that soul that gives us our energy, our light, our intelligence, our heart, more than anything. So I think we carry within us both an aspect of selfishness, but I think that most of us, and I would say certainly everybody who's here today, are really working, serving, loving, teaching, sharing, doing all that we can do to realize, not to get to know, but to realize with intuitive perception our true nature. And that true nature is pure goodness. That is the pure in heart. That is
I'm sorry, Shanti, will you please unmute yourself? I hit the wrong button there.
okay. Have I been muted for a long time or just for a moment?
Just a moment.
Okay. All right. I think I'll actually quit speaking here and see if anybody has questions or comments or. Yes. Sandra, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I'm so glad you're here today. And it's also, for me, it's like the the same subject has come up for me on a personal level, and I didn't even realize the selfishness in what I was doing, which was I've always had a problem praying, and I didn't learn how to do it as a child. I didn't have a good role model as the pastor in my church who couldn't wait to get out of there after the sermon. And, he'd do this at the end, like his, it was ridiculous. So now it's like, I'm learning to pray, I guess. And, but I noticed like, it's almost like a deal with God, all right, I'm going to in the morning pray and in the evening pray. And this happened just a few days ago. And I always find other reasons not to pray at that time. And I didn't realize how selfish I'm being. Didn't realize it. And how my ego is almost taking over the fight with God in the spiritual realm, which is, I'm looking at it now going, oh my gosh, I've been doing this. I just didn't realize it. And I want to thank you because, what you said, it ignited in me this selfishness I have that's really not at all connected to God or spirit, but to me.
It's interesting what you're saying. Paramahansa Yogananda, who's been my spiritual teacher, defined the ego as the soul identified with the body. And that's what I'm saying today, is that the soul identifies with a body, and a different body in each lifetime, each time it reincarnates. But it comes in that body to make spiritual progress. But that's what I was saying, by the very nature of our humanness, we have that ego. And that ego, I feel, puts up a huge struggle, a big, strong fight. Very often it can win to keep us away from, to keep us separate, to keep us feeling that we're separate from all that is, separate from each other, certainly separate from this notion of a super conscious divine essence or energy. We call it God, we call it many different things. But I'm only saying it to say we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. Not that I hear you really being hard on yourself, but it prompted this, because it is the nature of the human condition to be egoic. Our job as people who are aware, who are more conscious than the vast majority of people in this world. We are part of a minority, is the truth. But our job is to do just what you're doing, to say to ourselves, of course I'll pray twice a day. Of course I will do everything I can do to bring myself closer and closer and closer to that which is true. Every week we say this phrase, truth is one and it's eternal. And then the next line says, realize your oneness with it in your deathless self within. It means we're trying to align ourselves back into that place where we remember not with our mind, but with our being, who we really are. So just being present here, just listening to these discussions, just saying, I will pray. And prayer is really just a discussion between you and God. There is no right way or wrong way. What helps us to grow spiritually, what helps us to expand and uplift our nature is that intention. As soon as our intention is positive, I will sit and pray. The prayer almost doesn't matter. And it's simply a discussion. You could say anything you want to God. It's sort of a misnomer, like it's an I and thou. We are the divine. Each one of us is a spark of the divine, but it's easier to think of it like we're praying to something outside of ourselves. But the fact that you're setting the intention is huge. It's huge. It's puts you so much closer to God than the vast majority of people in the world. And it's beautiful. And it's like God watching your heart and knowing that you're doing that. So I'd like to applaud you for doing that. That's, I think, what I'm trying to say in a long way.
Thank you.
So sweet.
Thank you, Shanti, and thank you, Sandra, for sharing that very personal, experience. Okay, we have two people. What happened to Robert S? He had his hand up. Robert, are you still with us?
Well, yes, I think my question was answered. But I really like the idea of the soul is using the body to make progress. And my question was, how can we facilitate the soul in making that progress? And I heard prayer and alignment were two ways, which I really like, and that's a whole life's work there. But Dr. Rubenstone, is there an additional way, and as we live minute to minute, that we can aid our soul in the progress that it wants to make?
That's a very beautiful question.
Mm.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yogananda said many times, Yogananda, by the way, for those of you who don't know, it's only important as I quote him, was considered around the world. I mean, there was no Ananda at the time, to be a true avatar. Means like a true Jesus Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Moses, the really great beings of all, spiritual beings, and many more, of course. But he said, next to God's grace, the most important thing on the spiritual path is the company you keep. So I could talk to you for hours with that question. It's a rich question. But I would say to you, the Sanskrit word for what we're doing right now is satsang. Sat means truth, and sangha means company. So the more time we can spend in the presence of other truth seekers, of any religion, of any path, like what you're doing, but when people are seeking the truth, just being near them, because we are beings of energy, true energy. Now, finally, the physicists are saying what the great saints have been saying for thousands upon thousands of years. So there's a magnetism. So when you and I talk or are together and our intention is to grow spiritually, we magnetically help and uplift each other. So keeping good company is a very next important tool that we have. And a fun one at that.
Thank you. We're in good company today. Ruth, go ahead.
So
we can't see you, Ruth. Can you make it so that we can see your face?
I don't know where I went. Here I am.
Oh, there you are. Don't leave us. Don't leave us.
I love that. I don't know where I went.
So this is such a beautiful thought. And I'm wondering how this spiritual outlook, how can we manifest it in our behavior? How can we manifest it in what we do in the world and the actions that we take?
Ruth, can you raise your hand? Because I can't see you. I don't know who I'm speaking. Okay, good, great. There you are up there. What your question was, how can we manifest what in the world? Our spirituality, our good intentions? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, how would it change our actions? How does it change what you do or guide what you do in your daily life? Not just you, but also those that you're gathered with.
Well, that is a huge question. I mean, it's a very, very good question. It's one that is the entirety, in my mind, of our spiritual paths, whatever they are. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of a great, great teacher, probably the original teacher of yoga, the philosophy of yoga, called Patanjali. But Patanjali, it's called Patanjali's Eightfold Path. And he's outlined 8 stages that every soul, no matter what path you're on, no matter where you are on that path, no matter what your beliefs are, it doesn't matter. There's no isms here. It's not about religion or even practices. He's saying every soul has to go through these 8 stages to once again be completely reunited with his divine self, or be freed from the hold that the ego has on us. And the first 2 of those 8-fold paths are called yamas and niyamas. Maybe many of you have heard about this. The yamas are the don'ts in life, and the niyamas are the do's. And what they really mean is those things. So for instance, the first yama is called non-violence. And it says, don't be violent. This is what he's saying. And if you're not violent, when you perfect that, when you're completely not violent, now he doesn't just mean killing people or punching somebody, or because none of us here would ever do that. But probably all of us here have what Patanjali would have considered to be violent thoughts in a way. We're angry at somebody, or we make a snide comment in our head about what they're wearing, or gossip. These are all acts of violence against another soul. And I'm not going to go through, obviously, the 10 yamas and niyamas, but if you were ever interested in just looking them up, you just Google it. Yamas, Y-A-M-A-S, and niyamas, N-I-Y-A-M-A-S, yamas and niyamas. That is, for me, the perfect roadmap for keeping myself honest on the spiritual path, for bringing the best energy I possibly can into this world. And if I have time, Sarah, do I have time for 2 more sentences?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, you do. You have, probably another 10 minutes if you'd like.
Okay, I don't want to eat into anybody's time, but I'll just share an example so you all know what I mean. A few years ago, I live in spiritual community. My little house, it's not a house, but they're apartment buildings. This little 2-story condo that I'm in is in a community of about 110 or 20 people. And so we live separately, but we're a community. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. But a couple years ago, I had a fight with a man in the community. I mean, it's unimaginable. Here I am, the spiritual director, the minister, all of how I live, how he lives. And we got into an argument, and he was accusing me of certain things that were very hurtful to me. And I kept saying to him, you sure you mean what you're saying? Do you absolutely, here's what you said. Do you mean that? Yes, I mean that, he said. Anyway, it got very heated within me, outwardly too, but I was very emotional. And being that emotional is, I feel more when the ego has a hold of me than when I'm living with my more centered self. Anyway, after about 45 minutes, I said to him, I'm leaving. Well, he came over to my house immediately. I knew he would. Banging on the door, I kept saying to him, go away, I don't want to talk to you. He came in, we talked for 3 hours. And he said to me at the end of 3 hours, will you forgive me? Because he kept saying to me, I don't know why I said those things. I don't even believe them. I don't know why I was saying them. I said to him, of course I'll forgive you. What else could I do? But when he left, I knew in my heart, I hadn't really forgiven him. I was hurt. And I said to myself, you better figure out what's going on in you. So I called my partner. I've had a partner of 37 years, but we have 2 homes. We live separately. We see each other a lot, but we each have our own home. I said, can you print me out the biggest version of the yamas and niyamas that you can? He brought them over. I hung them on the wall. And for 5 days, I looked at them and I kept asking myself, where did you go wrong, Shanti? Were you violent? Were you being greedy? Did you steal something that wasn't yours? I went through each of them because in my mind, I said, you could go out into the world and tell people this story. And they would say, of course you should be angry at him that was outrageous what he did to you. I could have been really self-righteous at that moment. But the question came, do I want to be right or do I want to grow spiritually? And I knew I wanted to grow spiritually. So I'm saying by using the yamas and niyamas, all of these do's and don'ts, they're somewhat like the 10 Commandments, but different in a lot of ways. That's not so meaningful to go into now. But the spiritual, don't do this, don't be violent, don't be greedy, don't lie. And the do's, cleanliness, controlling our sensuality, not just sexuality, but sensuality. Anyway, you can read what all 10 of them are. And that is a perfect roadmap for this, because we wouldn't want to lie. We don't want to be greedy. We don't want to hurt people. We want to keep our mind clean and free. We want to be in control of our senses and not be overindulging in so many ways. So it could go on and on, but if you read them, you'll see what I mean, and you'll see a perfect way to begin to manifest your highest self, which is what we're doing. How can I manifest and live more in tune with my highest self?
Thank
Now,
you.
there's a wonderful question that each of us should ask ourselves. For sure. Thank you, Shanti. Christine, thank you for hanging in there with a hand.
No problem. I'm so delighted to be here. And Shanti, I'm so glad you're here. This is wonderful. And I love this question because I look at it a little bit differently. Are we good or are we selfish, self-involved? It seems to me that starting with ourselves, if we are, I'm going to call it self-examination. And this leads very much into the example that you gave, Shanti, that if we examine ourselves and we look at what makes me happy, what do I experience as good? And then realize that because of our connection as human beings, other people, my experience is the same or similar, we have a better understanding. And to me, that is a window for us to see, and then a door to walk through where, yes, we start with the self, but then it leads to the good. And I love what you said about the company that we keep, because those examples of goodness, we can't help but look at those as paradigms and things we want to send back into the world. So I just love this question.
That's thank you for that too, Christine. Beautiful comment. And in fact, I will say that one of the niyamas of Patanjali is introspection, self-study. So it's just, I think they would all come back to these basic truths, but I love how you phrased it. So thank you very much for sharing
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Know thyself, I believe was said by somebody
Yes.
pretty famous. Now, Joan, you had your hand up. Unmute yourself, Joan.
Hey, Joe, really enjoying this conversation, and it's brought up a lot of thoughts. To me, my spirit is my life force, and that's what, or energy, and that's what leaves our bodies when we die. I've been with people who have died, or animals, and that's what leaves the body, is our life force. And to me, by our choices, we raise our spirit or we dampen it. So if we choose to feed love, to love people, to be grateful, to have compassion, to forgive, a lot of everything that Shanti was saying, our spirits really grow, which brings us a lot of peace. But if we do the opposite, if we hate, and if we're greedy, and if we're cruel, our spirits diminish. And I just wanted to share one more thing. I have 3 young grandsons, and I'm sure a lot of you have grandchildren, and I have learned so much from him because they come up into the world filled with love. And I'm sure we've all seen that. They're filled with love and compassion and curiosity and joy. And like all of us, they're going to go on and be programmed. They're young. And the way it's important that they're programmed with continuing love and that. But I just wanted to share those two thoughts. And
Thank you,
great.
Joan.
Yeah, sure.
Very rich, very rich. Christine, you have your hand up? Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's your mute. So if nobody else has a question or a comment, take a deep breath. We'll give, oh, yes, good. Gloria Sunshine, what's up? Unmute. Unmute, Gloria Sunshine. Unmute,
I
Sunshine.
think she's trying. She's
Oh,
leaning.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Am I
There you go.
unmuted?
Yes, you are. Good.
Shanti, thank God through many, many things you wouldn't believe, but I won't go into that. That I am here and it's so enjoyed and feel so proud to have you speak since I am a member of the same path of Yogananda. I would like you to, just before you finish, just to maybe expound a little bit on the blueprint of meditation as it's included together with prayer from Ananda's point of view in connecting our path to the good.
I'll make this very brief because I think we'll move on to another speaker. Ultimately, meditation is a practice, and like all good things, the word's been sort of used in many ways, but in truth, meditation is a practice that puts us directly in touch with the divine, and I don't mean that outside. It takes us again into the divine within. It's a practice of introspection. It's a practice of love. It's a practice of quiet, of centering that brings us into a state of pure silence within, again, most really from the heart, connecting the heart to this spiritual center in all of our bodies, which is the point between the eyebrows. And it is the only state from which we can practice pure intuition, the only state. Otherwise, our mind gets involved. And again, the mind functions at the level of ego and wants to keep pulling us out. So I would say, as I've said to thousands for many years, if you really want to find pure peace, pure calmness, pure love, not human love, divine love, a state of bliss, then one needs to learn to meditate. It's called many things. People get there many ways. And I've watched many teachers who talk about praying our way there. I mean, Yogananda himself says chanting is half the battle, but ultimately to sit in the silence of the soul, in that center where there is, it's beyond or behind sound, behind all of what's been manifested in creation. True meditation is a very hard thing and way to describe, but it's central, not just on our path, but on many paths, because we need to get to that place where we are coming from our center, and we have to do everything we can do to get rid of that hold that the ego has. And it's the only place deep in meditation. There are many meditation techniques. We happen to teach something called Kriya Yoga. But meditation is essential. I would just strongly recommend, if people are not meditating, if they've never practiced any form of meditation, that you consider. There's courses online, there's courses everywhere, because it's that silence within, that oneness, again, that every religion talks about. So
thank you, Shanti. I like what you said, is that meditation is a practice that puts us in touch with the divine. And who does not want to be in touch with the divine? Okay, well, thank you so much, Shanti. Rich sharing that comes from a rich life and deep experiences. Thank you so much for being here. And now our next speaker is Reverend Susan Shannon, representing Buddhism. Reverend Shannon has worked among diverse populations all her life in varying capacities, including Tibetan refugees, the homeless, the differently abled, at-risk youth, and the incarcerated. She was ordained as an interfaith minister by the Chaplaincy Institute for Arts and Interfaith Ministries in 2011. She went on to complete a Master's of Divinity from Star King School for the ministry in 2012, with the focus of serving marginalized and oppressed communities. Since ordination, Susan's ministry has been focused on prison chaplaincy projects and transformational programs at San Quentin State Prison, including providing Buddhist chaplaincy on death row. Her work is rooted in the principles of restorative justice and emotional literacy, fostering interconnectedness and healthy community engagement. So I think we're in for a very deep sharing from Susan, Reverend Susan Shannon. Thank you for being with us, Reverend Shannon.
Thank you. It's really my joy and honor, and I'm especially happy to be here for a couple reasons. One is that my daughter's grandparents lived at Rossmore, and I spent many wonderful evenings at Rossmore over the years. They're gone now, but I am very familiar with Rossmore, and I don't know if the Interfaith Council of Rossmore was happening then, but in any case, I'm happy to be here. And the other is to be here with Shanti, because it was actually Paramahansa Yogananda who was one of the first saints to put me on my path. And it's been a long, long path, most definitely, starting when I was quite young. I love the question, and my simple answer to the question, is humankind good or selfish, is yes. True interfaith spirit of both and is yes. But since you asked me here to speak from the Buddhist tradition, I will say there is no one Buddhist tradition, but I will speak from the Mahayana tradition. And my kind of lineage, if you will, has been in the Tibetan tradition for about 50 plus years now. What I am sensing from the people's here on the screen from your questions has redirected how I will enter into the conversation a little bit. And I will weave some things in, but I'm just going to start out by saying, from the Mahayana perspective, we all have Buddha nature within, and you can think of that as Christ consciousness, or you can think of that as the spark of the divine, or you can think of that in whatever terms are comfortable and familiar to you. But basically it means that we all have that inner light of awakening, of being awakened within us. And we're born into this world of form, of you and me, of this and that. We're born into a world of duality. And yet our strivings, our spiritual strivings, pretty much no matter what the tradition you adhere to, is to get back to a non-dual state. And Buddhism is included in that. So we, in the Mahayana tradition, we consider that the human existence, the human condition, is comprised of 5 basic elements. And I'm going to keep it really simple. I like to think of them as the 5 color crayons that you get when you're a kid. You know, the first box of color crayons you got, which are, you know, the basic colors. And I will label those for you. However, it's form. So the us and the them, the this and the that. feeling, which is not so much emotions, it's more like the kind of the tone of experience that's happening in the moment. And then perspective, which has to do with a lot of our conditioning, with our hurts, fears, and shames. And those are three very important terms in transformation that I'll come back to: hurt, fear, and shame. And then our what we call volitional activity, and what that refers to is how are the senses, how are our eyes, our ears, our taste, our touch, how are they informing our experience? And then we have our consciousness, and our consciousness is the lens through which we view what is going on around us. And given those five components, we call the five aggregates, we share as human beings, we share the span of human emotion. And those emotions, from the Buddhist perspective, can be enlightened, awakened emotions, or they can be the afflicted emotions. And the afflicted emotions are more egoic based. And those emotions are ones that are, they act out differently with all of us, again, depending on our conditioning, our traumas, how we grew up, our hurts, our fears, and our shames. And what I like to do when I teach is bring forward the great image of the three fingers pointing back. When you're pointing one finger out, you have three pointing back at you. So this is where the pedal hits the metal here. This is where your spiritual practice really starts and stops, to me, is either when you're pointing out, you're pointing at somebody else, you're pointing at a situation, you're complaining about something. What's really going on with you? Name those three things: 1, 2, and 3, and then do some analyzing. Is this about a hurt that I've had? Is this about a fear that I have? Is this about some shame that I have? And when you analyze that, you begin to get clues as to how your ego is constructed. And so, for example, doing the prison work that I did, which was all about rehabilitative, actually reconstructing the narrative by which is ours to claim. So bringing violent offenders back to their true, authentic self. And this was not Buddhist work, this was human work. Although I will say one of the reasons I love it so much is it's absolutely Buddhist work. It's work of the divine, it's work of our own spiritual journey, that's awakening that we can claim, every one of us, our journey up the lotus stem. So when does our inherent goodness begin to become selfish? Well, usually it's the bumps and the scratches and the various things that happen to us that then form us into becoming more guarded, and form us into pointing the finger out a little bit more. And when we're pointing the finger out a little bit more, what also happens is that we begin to encase ourselves in a more, a less permeable identity. And as that identity gets fixed, our ego gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. And we begin to get our feelings hurt more. We begin to have more drama in our life. We begin to have actually normalize drama in our life, normalize the likes and the dislikes and the this and the that and the other. Well, how do we get beyond that? I've recently listened to a wonderful series from Spiritual Directors International on the teachings of Howard Thurman. And one of the quotes that I found so perfect was, there is really no hope for social transformation without the individual longing for spiritual maturation, something like that. I have it quoted more directly on my other computer, but this is what I saw happening in the prison. I saw the 3 factors of connection, disconnection, and interconnection at work, and how disconnection, by way of hurt, fear, or shame, by way of oppression, by way of all of the kind of things that can create a personal narrative that would lead one to violence. And violence, of course, is an expression of extreme disconnection. But then with that satsang, with that sangha, with another Sanskrit term, kalyana mitra, which I just love, the spiritual friends, which we can all be to each other, kalyana mitra. When you can travel with spiritual friends who have the desire to hear your story, who recognize that this human condition is all about hurting, feeling joy, the entire span of the bigger color crayon box of emotion, and we all are going to live and die as imperfect human beings, then there becomes room for really embracing each other, for really seeing each other's Buddha nature. And when we can really see each other's Buddha nature, that's like lighting a tea light with another tea light. It gets passed on. I sat for years in groups of 35 men who would travel for a year together, violent offenders, most of them having committed murder or murders, at least getting incarcerated for one murder, starting our journey together, sitting around the circle with their arms folded, and within days recognizing that we all share the same kind of sufferings and fears, no matter one's skin color, no matter where one was from. And then the quivering of the heart begins with acceptance, with a non-judgmental presence, with a willingness to hear each other's story. And as the quivering of the heart begins, the other hearts in the room begin to quiver. And before you know it, you're sitting in satsang, you're sitting in sangha. And this is something I think that you in Rossmore might be a little bit better able to do because you're in an actual community, but our communities, especially since COVID, have become virtual, a lot of them. And it does really help when you can sit together and be in circle together and witness each other's growth and be present in a non-judgmental way and unpack the hurts and the fears and the shame. Because then what we get to do is we begin to see what narratives are we carrying around about us, about ourselves that are no longer useful. What narratives are we carrying around, if we carried around our entire life, that are not really ours? They might have been put on us by our parents, by our conditioning, by the cultural conditioning around our genders, and they might not be our authentic narratives. And so to the degree that we can let go of those and create ideas of ourselves and visions of ourselves that are more aligned with our divine nature, when one heals, we all heal. And back to the Mahayana Buddhism, the divine qualities we call the paramitas. So Shanti beautifully laid out the roadmap from her tradition, and another roadmap from the Buddhist tradition is to practice the 6 paramitas. And the 6 paramitas, so the word paramita means going from one shore to the other. So where are we going from and where are we going to? We're going from an egoic-based existence to one that is more about interconnection. So in the Buddhist terms, we're going from a samsara existence to a more of a nirvana. And nirvana, the word nirvana is translated as extinguish. We're extinguishing those afflictions. We're purifying ourselves. We're purifying our emotions. One of the techniques that I used when I began working almost completely with the paramitas some years ago was I had also just gone through seminary and healed my wounding around being raised Catholic. I didn't understand Catholicism. I was a bad Catholic, but my journey through seminary gave me a different metaphor for the cross. I began to see the cross, and I still use the cross as the horizontal cross is how we are in the world. What is my identity in the world? My communities, my jobs, my roles. And then the vertical is our alignment with spirit, with the divine, with our own Buddha nature, however you want to name it. And what I began to do is I began to use this cross as a visual aid. When I went to bed at night, I would imagine the cross, and I would ask myself, okay, was my horizontal lined up with my vertical? Was it crooked? Was it way down? So for example, let's say I didn't sleep the night before and I was running a little bit late, and on the way to the prison, I got a flat tire and I couldn't get my car off well, then my horizontal would probably be a little bit low, because I have been dealing with a whole lot of practical stuff. But generally, I like to try and bring it up no matter what. But in this wonderful, fruitful, juicy time of right before you go to bed, when you can really look at your day and acknowledge it, in this metaphor, I built in little ratchets under the horizontal, so that if I had a day where I was way more horizontal based, way more in the practical world, not so much living in my prayer channel, not so much able to reflect the divine as much as I wanted, I would ratchet it up. I would like literally hear it go and build in what I felt I could do to support myself living in a way that where the intersection of the horizontal and the vertical was right here in my heart. And using the paramitas is such a useful framework. The paramitas, you can look these up anywhere. There's actually 10, but the Mahayana tradition lifts out 6. We consider these to be divine qualities, spiritual qualities. It's generosity, ethical discipline, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentrative meditation or focus, and wisdom. And another framework, so I go through those every single night. I'll lay there in bed and I'll put my hand on my heart and my hand on my belly, and I'll ask myself questions. How have I been generous today? And I breathe. How have others been generous to me? Where have I seen others be generous to each other? And this is like standing in the grocery store line and seeing somebody give their place up, or, you know, these little things that happen. Where have I missed being generous today? And this is important because to me, the place we get the best traction in our spiritual growth is not when we're at our best, it's when we're at our worst. So I like to suggest to people when I teach classes, identify the lowest part of your day where you might have yelled at somebody in a car or had a thought you wish you hadn't or whatever. Have compassion for yourself. Ask yourself, is this coming from hurt, fear, or shame? A lack of self-care? have more compassion for yourself, because we're all human, and then get on and just promise that you'll do better the next day. And so to go through the paramitas in this way, although I usually fall asleep by the time I get to patience, but still it's a good way to fall asleep, is really useful. And the paramitas are echoed in so many traditions in different ways. Another useful lens from the Buddhist tradition, more specifically the Tibetan tradition, is the use of body, speech, and mind. And if you can view your entire day through these three gates, they call them the three gates. And if you think about it, our body, our speech, and our mind really is how we go through the world. So on what level are we engaging with the world on our body, speech, and mind? Is it aligned with our heart? Does our voice represent what's in our heart, in our mind? In the Tibetan tradition, the word for heart and the word for mind is the same. And I just love that, because when we're speaking from our heart, it's all aligned, right? Our mind, our heart, our voice, it's all aligned. So these are some of the tools that I feel can help us as a community and as individuals find that place where our selfishness is teased out to a more altruistic way of being. We're actually using ourself, we're using our consciousness, we're using our mental faculties. We have to use them. Our senses, if you think about our senses wouldn't work without something on the outside of us. We're wired to other. So how can we bring that to a vibration that is one more aligned with the spiritual qualities? And this is why I answer the question that I think it's both true. I was reading a couple nights ago an interesting take on selfishness. That most of the time we think of maybe selfishness as being kind of a narcissistic attitude. But this particular person was talking about the selfishness of living narratives that no longer are about us, and that the ego will cling to those just as well as it will cling to new ones that we're trying to make. And if we allow that to happen, then we're being selfish from this person's perspective. And I thought, wow, that's really an interesting take on selfishness. How do we cling to stories that are no longer ours, and why? You know, you think of family feuds, or one real easy one that I think we can maybe all relate to is maybe knowing somebody 20, 30 years ago. And maybe that person, you hadn't seen them this long, but what you remember is they did a really stupid thing. And so you just keep remembering. Every time you remember that person, you remember that stupid thing that they did. It's not really giving the person the opportunity to live and die as an imperfect human being, or let alone to grow. In the prison work, we always said, nobody deserves to be identified for the rest of their life by the worst decision that they ever made. And so why do we hold people like, oh, cousin Sarah, she's such a pain. I don't really want to be with her. We'll have to go early. You know, all these kind of things that we do. Well, maybe she's not anymore. Maybe she's not. And even if she is, when you have that thought, you can at least transform that thought, bring that thought up into your heart. Oh, cousin Sarah, may she have all the causes and conditions that will lead her to a softer, gentler way of being. And so we constantly have to tune our spiritual vibration to a higher level by building in these little antidotes, these little tricks. Thought forms are really heavy, especially negative thoughts. They're really heavy. In the violent offender work I did, well, just being in the prison, the prison is a heavy place, as opposed to being in an ashram or a temple or a church where people go and worship. It's light. It brings you up. It elevates you. Well, we live in this world. Another line from Howard Thurman is he was riffing on the many are called, few are chosen, and turned it around to be everybody is called, few choose. So if we're choosing, then we have hard work to do all the time. True spiritual practice is where the sparks are flying. It's not what we do tomorrow. It's not what we do when we go home. It's not, I mean, it is, but it's not limited to that. It's not limited to sitting on a cushion. It's not limited to praying. It's right now. What are our minds doing right now, below our feet? If we let a fly out the window, is it because it's annoying us and we're glad to get rid of it? Or can we bless that fly? Can we say, may all beings be free of illusion as we let that fly out the window? And can we even go even further and thank the fly for giving us an opportunity to practice generosity? So we have to keep ourselves fresh in our practice. Beware of habitual spiritual practice, because it can get habitual to where it's not meaningful anymore. It's just a habit. Utilize the body, speech, and mind, and whatever roadmap you feel is appropriate to you. And recognize another truth, and then I'll conclude. A really big truth, 4 words, actually 8, that was the basis and is the basis of all of my my work. Hurt people, and healing people, heal people. When I was in death row, sitting in front of one particular person, I didn't want to know their crimes, but one I did. And I just felt so much compassion for this person, because the truth of hurt people. You know, if we go a night with a not a good sleep, we might get impatient at the dog or our kids or our partner or something. But to commit a crime of the degree that some of the death row inmates in my Sangha had committed, imagine that pain. Imagine that pain. And so to sit and to really believe in the innate Buddha nature, the innate spark, the innate light, and embrace the reality of the suffering will allow us to walk forward in a way that will bring forward healing in ourselves and others. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Shannon. It feels like we could listen to your experiences and the metaphors and parallels that you got from them, working with people that are in prison. We could listen to that for a long time, and we've still got time. So I'm hoping that you'll have a chance to share that. Who does anybody have a question or a comment? Okay, Joan, go ahead. Unmute.
This is for Dr. Shannon. A couple years ago, I read a book, The Buddhist on Death Row. Have you read that book? Yes, and I was really moved by it. And
I'm in that book.
Are you in the book?
Yeah. I'm the chaplain in the book.
Oh, all right. And I mean, I recommend this to everybody. I mean, he was about 19 when he supposedly committed this crime, and he's probably in his early 60s now. You're shaking your head. But one thing I learned from it is we can find love wherever we are. We can love wherever we are, and we can have love wherever we are, even on death row. Yeah, I was really moved by that.
Yeah, yeah. And
I recommend this book to people. So,
yeah, it's a good book. David Sheff.
yes, David Sheff. Mhm.
3 of the guys I worked with on death row, the inmates are out of death row.
Is he out of death row?
No,
Jay?
Jarvis is not, but
No.
there was one man, I'll just say real quick.
Mhm.
He had a psychotic break and ended up in the mental ward, the psych ward in the hospital there in the prison for a year. And I was able to go see him every week. And
Mhm.
he said to me, he was very committed to Buddhism. And he said to me, Susan, here I am on the psych ward. How can I practice the paramitas here?
Mhm.
And so we talked about that, and we came up with ideas, and miraculously he ended up getting off death row, just to show how this vibrational change will change one's inner life and one's outer circumstances.
Amazing. Go ahead, Sandra. Sandra? There we go.
Unmuting. So back in the 80s, I worked at Muktananda's ashram on the prison project. And what I did was I sent absolutely gorgeous packages to inmates on death row.
Mhm.
And that's part of the project to do that. And then when I would read their letters and then choose the magazines and the articles and go to the bookstore and whatever I needed put in there. But the thing about it was it had to look like the most beautiful gift you could give anyone. So when they, even the packaging, everything. So when they did receive these gifts, these men broke down in tears even before opening the box because of the paper and the bows and the card. And they said that to me, when you said hurt people and healed people, the love went through them like a divine spark or something, and it changed them immediately. And then they would say, like, no one's ever cared about me to do this.
Yeah.
No one would wrap something up for me like this. I'm on death row. And it's, to me, it's about the heart. It's not about what he had done. And as you said, for one moment in their lives, maybe something changed these people in that moment, and not changed, but they did a desperate act or something, and now they're on death row, and it was healing for them and healing for me.
A beautiful story.
Yeah, thank
Very.
you. The City Yoga Project prison program is millions of inmates have benefited by that program. And I got that program started in San Quentin too.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. That's what it was, City Yoga. Yes.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
upstate in New York at the ashram.
Yeah. City Yoga is a beautiful program that really brings the devotional aspect to the awakening of hearts, which happens quite readily in prison.
That makes sense also.
Yeah. Channing, you'd like to share? Question.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Channing.
So nice to see you and listen to you. Thank you so much. I probably know a little bit more about your experiences at San Quentin because I was the first class that I was in at Chi. You were the teacher.
Oh.
And I have never forgotten those 3 things: connection, disconnection, and interconnection. That's what's really been moving for me in my life. But I was wondering if you could also talk a little bit about a movie on video that's on YouTube called Cue Ball, which is the story of a number of inmates that you worked with. You're not particularly in this video, but it's really a wonderful video showing the transformation of almost all of these men. And some of these men are the ones that you said have now, passed the parole board and are now out, but some of them did not pass. Their attitude was, well, I'm going to make this prison experience a better place.
Yeah.
So they had been transformed inside. It wasn't with the goal of getting out. It was literally a true transformation of their heart. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the movie, and I'll tell a little bit. Let's see, you can get the movie Cue Ball. Q stands for what? The death row?
No, Quentin.
Quentin. Oh, that's right, Quentin. So many of the rehabilitation choices that the men have when they reach the prison include sports. And one of the sports is basketball. So many of these men were involved in the basketball group. And, you can really begin to see the bonding and the connections that these men are making with each other. And so I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that video.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe not focus on that one so much as there's a whole genre of films that are coming out now, mostly having to do with the last 10, 12 years at San Quentin. And I was really blessed to be there during those years and not only facilitate one of the films, but be in another one and see the incredible, almost utopian community that we were creating there at San Quentin. And that's why so many filmmakers were attracted to coming in. So Cue Ball is a film that was made by, about the basketball team there. And the basketball is huge in the prison. It's a sport that can be done safely. A lot of people play sports, even people play sports who don't want to do programming. And it's a way of finding, actually to me, it's a way of finding the divine. And I will say one of the guys in the film, in Cue Ball's name, he goes by Ant, and he was in one of my groups. I think it was his first group. He was a very young person compared to the rest of the older men in my group. And he didn't believe in anything. He felt like, why should he believe in anything? And I asked him, well, where do you feel like you're a part of something bigger than you? Where do you feel like you're without thought? Like I was trying to get to a non-dual state of where do you feel like you can move or you can interact in a way that's totally interconnected? And he said, the basketball court. And I said, well, that's your church. Can you claim that as your church? And that this is your gift? And I'm telling you, it opened him up. He realized he was no longer on the other side of the fence with people who went to church or people believed. Because as we went around the room and people who were telling the qualities of God and church that they are attracted to, it was everything that Ant felt on the basketball court. And Ant had a 104 to life sentence. And he got that sentence commuted and is out now, about a year or so out. Almost all the guys that you see in that film are out. And this is both representing California's changing viewpoint on rehabilitation, in large part because San Quentin is a rehabilitative prison with all the wonderful volunteers in the area, the Bay Area, that are coming in. More and more people, inmates, have found acceptance, have found caring, have found their authentic being, have cried together, have listened to their stories. So this is was a big focus pre-COVID for a whole lot of films. There's another one now, 26 to Life, it's called, I think, and it's about the running team there. And it's starting to win awards all over the place. And the star of the team, this is one of my favorite stories, was Jehovah's Witness. He was in one of my groups as well. And very guarded, very reticent to speak. in our little group, it was a small group, it was a different kind of a group, spent a whole month with him. We decided that we needed to spend a whole month just focused on helping him unpack a lot of his family stuff and the conditions around his crime. And he came to me one day in the yard and he had just the biggest grin and he said, Susan, I feel like I don't know, I'm just giddy. I don't know what it is. And I said, have you heard of Hafiz? He said, no. And I said, well, Hafiz talks about being in love with God. And he said, that's it. I feel in love with God. And like the doors of his heart had opened by way of sitting in circle with 12 other people who were willing to give him a month of their life to listen to his story. And he began coming to our meditation group, and he saw his running as his gift, as his ministry. He actually, I think, ran out of San Quentin, not quite literally, but once he got out of the gate, he ran across the Golden Gate Bridge. So there's a whole genre. There's another one, the last one I'll mention, called The Prison Within, which is really excellent at showing the kind of work that I feel has to happen in our communities. So thank you, Channing.
Thank you for those, for that story. I mean, it just lifts me up when I hear a story like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Susan, one more question. Are all three of those videos on YouTube?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one that I helped get in, Mantra, Sounds into Silence. That one is on Amazon Prime, I think. And there's several scenes in there that happened in San Quentin. And one of them is so magical. It changed people's minds about inmates all around the world. This film is an award winner, went all around the world, just stunning. But it's about mantra, the use of sacred sound to bring people together.
So
What's the name of it again? I'm sorry.
Mantra.
Mantra, okay.
Sounds into Silence.
And Cue Ball is on YouTube, but you have to know that there are several cue balls there. You have to go Cue Ball the film. That's the full one, if you're looking for Cue Ball.
I don't think 26 to Life is fully loaded into any platform yet because they're just doing shows, right, or the festivals right now.
Mantra, okay.
Why
Susan?
do you think? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Will.
This question just hit me. I'm wondering if you find that the worldview that this life is a way not just for us to participate in the present or the future of Source being in our midst, and if that worldview, that life philosophy, helps inmates more so than those life philosophies or worldviews that this life is a test.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a great question. Yeah, the inmates used to tell me all the time. And actually my mentor, Father George at the prison, he always said, if you think to the volunteers, if you think you're bringing God into the prison, go home now. He's already here. And inmates would say when people of the evangelical sort would go along the rows of cells, they would just tell them to keep going. What has been really attractive to inmates in terms of their own expression and practice of their faith of choice is community. So Sangha again, satsang, acceptance, non-judgment. And so that means a theology that doesn't condemn them. And this is why Buddhism, I think, is also becoming more and more popular with inmates, is it's not a condemning tradition. Sarah, do I have a couple minutes?
Oh, please. Yeah, take a couple
Okay.
more minutes. Yeah. And then we'll go to Meg Keeley.
Okay, I'll make it real quick. Just an example of that is when COVID hit and I wasn't going to be able to go into the prison like I had planned. My plan B, thanks to my death row Sangha, was to create a correspondence course that would be available to, they wanted it to be available to women on death row. And so I very quickly created a correspondence course of 12 lessons, introduction to Buddhism, everything Buddhism, all the traditions have in common. And I had 8 guys on death row who agreed to kind of test drive it for me. Well, thanks to COVID and transfers, in just 2.5 years, that program is in prisons in every state in the United States. Over 1,000 inmates have requested the workbook just in this last year. And so the demographic, the spiritual demographic in prisons, from what I can tell, is very much the same as it is on the outside. More and more people, spiritual but not religious, spiritual seekers, although most definitely the different chapels that we had were filled all the time in fellowship, but it had a lot to do with the way the chaplains themselves work their theology and perceive things like evil and good and all of that. So your question is, I can feel the layers underneath your question, but thank you. Good question.
Thank you. Meg, go ahead. Unmute. Oh, there you go.
Sorry. Thank you, Susan. I've really appreciated everything you've said today. And I just wanted to make all of you who are here today aware of the program that we have with our Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County, that we do have interfaith chaplains working with our youth at Juvenile Hall. And also we've started a mentoring program that has just barely gotten started because of COVID. But we're certainly looking to be those witnesses, the presence with these young people that can listen to their stories and bring a loving presence into their lives. And I just wanted everyone to be aware of that and invite you to look into that program. It's called iChange, and it's on the website for the Interfaith Council.
Thank you. I teach prison ministry, and I love seeing people light up when I say, if you want to get involved with prison work, work with kids. Work with the youth, because that's where we have to dismantle that pipeline.
Exactly.
Another show that you might want to look into is called The Redemption Project. It's on CNN. It's a Van Jones series, and it's about victim offender dialogues.
That would be interesting to see the one who hurt and the one who has been hurt.
Yeah.
Talking.
I participated in the first one in the series for 2.5 years before it was actually filmed. And it's really the epitome of restorative justice work on that level.
Sounds like there would be a lot of forgiveness in those discussions. Well, folks, anybody else for another question or comment? We are just about ready to close down here. It has been so rich. I've just got pages of notes, and I want to go back and start all over again and hear what you all have to say, which, because Will records it and hopefully Channel 28, well, you'll send that to Channel 28. We will have another time to go back over it. So there's so many things, the 9 of this and the 10 of that, and and they're powerful. It's just so powerful to hear about your work, Reverend Shannon, with the prisons, and Shanti. I'm sure you have been working with hundreds and hundreds of people who you see at Ananda, who embrace, and you're both saying sort of the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep.
So join us on the 3rd Monday for our next meeting. And Nazir, I think, are you is Nazir still? I don't have my schedule in front of me, but I think Nazir speaking to Islam is, yes, hi, Nazir. Are you speaking in March? Or do neither of us know right now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so Nazir is one of our speakers in March. And then maybe we'll be able to get Reverend Rodney Lemry on in March. We can just trade days with him. So thank you to all who were here. I feel your energy. I feel your interest. I feel your passion in learning about interfaith. So thank you. Thank you all. And we'll see you hopefully in a month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Susan and Shanti, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
you.
it was
Bye.
wonderful.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Thank you. Bye.